The medical kit slipped from Owen's hands and clattered across the floor. He cursed under his breath and bent down to gather the scattered bandages. 3 weeks on Eritos, 7, and he still couldn't get used to the lighter gravity. Everything moved differently here. Even simple tasks became exercises in frustration. Owen worked alone at the aid station, a small prefab building tucked between 2 massive rock formations. The mining company had sent him here to patch up workers who got careless with their equipment. So far, he'd treated exactly 4 people. 2 crushed fingers, 1 minor burn, and someone who'd managed to get a wrench stuck in their boot. Not exactly the exciting frontier medicine he'd imagined when he signed up. He finished restocking the supply cabinet and glanced at the clock. Another 6 hours until sunset. Another 6 hours of sitting in this tiny room with nothing but recycled air and the hum of the environmental systems. Owen grabbed his tablet and scrolled through his messages. Nothing new. His sister had sent a photo of her kids 2 days ago. His ex-girlfriend had blocked him on all platforms. The mining supervisor wanted a monthly supply report that a scratching sound came from outside. Owen looked up. Probably just wind pushing debris against the walls. Eritos, 7 had sandstorms that could strip paint off metal. He went back to his tablet. The scratching came again, louder this time. Then a soft whimpering sound followed. Owen set down the tablet and walked to the door. The sound definitely came from something alive. Maybe one of the miners had gotten hurt and was trying to get his attention. He pulled open the door and stepped outside. The creature sat huddled against the wall about 3 meters away. It was small, roughly the size of a large dog, with scales that shimmered between copper and bronze in the afternoon light. 2 wings lay folded against its body, but the left one hung at an odd angle. Blood dripped from a tear in the wing membrane onto the dusty ground. Owen froze. He'd seen pictures during his orientation briefing. The locals called them draconids. They looked like the dragons from old Earth stories, but these were real and they were intelligent. Very intelligent, according to the reports. They also avoided humans completely and had been known to attack mining equipment that got too close to their territory. The creature whimpered again and tried to crawl backward, but the movement made it cry out in pain. Its eyes were wide with terror. Owen raised his hand slowly and took a step back. "Easy there. I'm not going to hurt you." The draconid stopped moving, but kept watching him. Its breathing came in quick, shallow gasps. Owen could see the injury clearly now. Something had torn through the wing membrane, leaving a ragged wound that bled steadily. The creature was young, probably just a few months old based on its size. It needed help or that wing would never heal properly. He backed toward the door of his clinic, keeping his movements slow and calm. "Just wait right there, okay? I'm going to get some supplies." The creature didn't move. Owen ducked inside and grabbed his emergency kit. His hands shook slightly as he pulled out antiseptic, bandages, and a local anesthetic spray he used for tissue injuries. He had no idea if any of this would work on draconid biology, but he had to try. When he came back outside, the creature was still there. It had curled into a tighter ball, wings tucked close except for the damaged one. Owen knelt down about 2 meters away and opened the kit. "I'm a doctor. Well, a medic really, but close enough. That wing looks bad. I think I can help if you'll let me." The draconid's eyes followed his every movement. Owen pulled out the anesthetic spray first and held it up so the creature could see it. "This will make the pain stop. It might sting for a second, but then you'll feel better. I promise." He moved closer, one careful shuffle at a time. The draconid tensed but didn't try to flee. When Owen got within arm's reach, he could see the creature trembling. Fear or pain, probably both. "It's okay. I've got you." Owen reached out slowly and touched the edge of the wing. The draconid flinched but held still. The membrane felt thin and delicate under his fingers, like wet paper. He sprayed the anesthetic around the wound, working quickly but gently. The creature hissed once, then relaxed slightly as the pain relief kicked in. The tear was worse up close. Whatever had caused this had really done damage. Owen cleaned the wound with antiseptic, watching for any sign that his supplies were causing a bad reaction. The draconid stayed quiet, Watching him with those large, intelligent eyes, he pulled out specialized adhesive strips designed for delicate tissue repair. They were meant for human skin grafts, but the principle should be the same. Owen carefully aligned the torn edges of the wing membrane and applied the strips, creating a framework for the tissue to heal along. Then he wrapped the wing with a light bandage to keep everything in place. There, that should hold. The Draconid shifted its wings slightly, testing the repair. For the first time, it made a sound that wasn't pain or fear. A soft chirping noise, almost curious. Owen sat back and smiled. "Yeah, you're welcome." He pulled out a water pouch and squeezed him into a small container. The creature sniffed it, then lapped it up quickly. Owen added some basic nutrient gel next. The Draconid ate that too. Movement caught his eye. Owen looked up at the canyon walls surrounding his clinic. Shapes moved in the shadows between the rocks. Larger shapes. Adult Draconids, watching. He counted at least 5, maybe more. His mouth went dry. If they decided he was a threat, there wasn't much he could do about it. "I'm just helping," Owen said to the watchers. "Your little one was hurt. I fixed the wing. That's all." The shapes didn't move closer, but they didn't leave either. The young Draconid finished eating and curled up against the wall of the clinic. Its eyes began to close, exhaustion taking over now that the pain had stopped. Owen stood up slowly and backed toward his door. "You can stay there as long as you need to. I'll leave the door open in case you want to come inside where it's warmer." He went into the clinic, but left the door propped open. Through the doorway, he could see the small creature sleeping peacefully. The adult Draconids remained in the shadows, silent guardians watching over their wounded young. Owen cleaned his supplies and put everything away. His hands had stopped shaking. Whatever happened next, he'd done the right thing. Sometimes that was all a doctor could do to... As the sun set over the canyon, deep rumbling sounds echoed through the rocks. The adult Draconids were talking to each other in their own language. Owen wondered what they were saying. Wondered if they understood that he'd only wanted to help. When he checked again an hour later, the young Draconid was gone. Only a few spots of dried blood remained to show it had ever been there. Owen looked up at the canyon walls, but the watchers had disappeared too. He closed the clinic door and sat down at his desk. Tomorrow would probably be just another quiet day on Eridos 7. He had no idea how wrong he was. Scratching noises woke Owen before his alarm went off. He rolled out of his bunk and stumbled to the clinic entrance, still half asleep. When he opened the door, 3 small Draconids sat waiting outside. They looked up at him with bright eyes, each one injured in some way. One had burns across its shoulder that looked recent. Another had deep scratches along its side. The third held one of its front legs at an awkward angle. "You've got to be kidding me," Owen muttered. 2 larger Draconids stood further back, juveniles based on their size. They were each about as big as an adult human, with fully developed wings and darker scales. They watched Owen carefully, but made no move to approach. Owen rubbed his face and looked at the injured youngsters. They'd come here on purpose, brought by the older ones. Word had spread somehow. He'd helped one of them, and now they expected him to help more. "All right, come on then. Let's get you fixed up." He treated the burned one first. The injuries looked like they'd come from touching something extremely hot, probably one of the thermal vents that dotted the landscape. Owen applied cooling gel and wrapped the shoulder with a light dressing. The young Draconid chirped softly and nuzzled against his arm. The scratched one needed cleaning and antiseptic. The wounds weren't deep, but they'd gotten dirt in them. Owen flushed each cut carefully and applied antibacterial ointment. The Draconid hissed when the antiseptic stung, but it held still until Owen finished. The last one had a fractured leg. Owen could feel where the bone had cracked. He created a splint using materials from his supplies and wrapped it securely. The young Draconid tested the leg, found it supported its weight better now, and made that same curious chirping sound. The whole time Owen worked, the 2 juvenile Draconids watched. They moved closer as they saw he wasn't hurting the youngsters. By the time he finished treating the 3rd patient, they were only a few meters away. Owen started explaining what he was doing out loud. It felt silly at first, talking to creatures that probably didn't understand human language. But the juveniles tilted their heads when he spoke, like they were trying to make sense of his words. Their eyes followed his hands as he demonstrated how to change a bandage or apply ointment. "See, you clean it first," Owen said, showing them a bottle of antiseptic. "Then you put this on to keep infection out. The bandage protects it while it heals." One of the juveniles made a low rumbling sound. The other leaned closer to watch. By midday, more draconids arrived. Owen counted 7 this time, a mix of ages and sizes. One adult landed near his clinic with a damaged wing. The membrane had healed wrong at some point in the past, leaving it stiff and painful. The adult draconid extended the wing toward Owen, then settled down to wait. "You want me to look at that?" Owen asked. The creature didn't respond, but kept the wing extended. Owen examined the old injury carefully. Someone or something had torn the wing badly, and it had healed on its own without proper care. Scar tissue had formed in thick bands that restricted movement. He couldn't fix it completely without surgery, but he could work on the flexibility. He spent an hour massaging the scar tissue and applying compounds designed to soften it. The adult draconid remained perfectly still the entire time, though Owen could tell the process was uncomfortable. When he finished, the wing moved more easily than before. The adult draconid stood up and tested its wing. It flapped several times, rising off the ground. A look that Owen could only describe as surprise crossed its face. It landed again and made a deep thrumming sound. More draconids appeared from the canyons, responding to that sound. By evening, Owen had treated 15 different patients. His supplies were running lower than he'd expected. The mining company restocked him once a month, and he just used enough materials for half that time in a single day. The draconids started bringing him things. Small pieces of crystal that glowed faintly in the dark. Plants with thick, waxy leaves that grew near the thermal vents. Chunks of mineral Owen didn't recognize. They placed these offerings near his clinic door and stepped back, watching to see if he'd accept. Owen picked up one of the glowing crystals and turned it over in his hand. The light was beautiful, steady and warm. He nodded to the draconid who'd brought it. "Thank you. This is really nice." The creature made a pleased, chirping sound. Owen realized what was happening. They were trying to pay him or trade for his services. This wasn't just about getting medical help. It was about establishing a relationship, showing respect through exchange. He accepted each offering carefully, treating them with obvious appreciation. Some of the plants turned out to be useful. When he crushed the waxy leaves, they produced a gel that worked as a natural antiseptic. The minerals might have value, but more importantly, accepting them meant something to his patients. As the sun started setting, Owen noticed adult draconids positioning themselves around his clinic. They weren't threatening or aggressive. They settled into spots on the rocks and canyon walls, creating a loose perimeter. A few juveniles joined them. Owen stepped outside and looked at his new guards. "You don't have to do that. I'm fine on my own." A large adult near the cliff edge turned its head to look at him. Its expression was unreadable, but it didn't move from its position. Owen went back inside and started organizing the gifts the draconids had brought. He was setting up a storage area for them when he heard footsteps outside. Heavy footsteps. He turned toward the door and saw the biggest draconid yet. This one was massive, easily 3 times his size, with scales so dark they were almost black. Scars covered its body, marks from old battles or accidents. Its left shoulder looked wrong, twisted slightly out of position. The elder draconid walked slowly toward the clinic entrance. Every other draconid nearby went completely silent. Even the wind seemed to die down. Owen swallowed hard and stepped outside. This was clearly someone important, a leader or elder among the draconids. The creature's eyes were sharp and intelligent, studying Owen like it could see right through him. The elder sat down heavily and extended its damaged shoulder toward Owen. The message was clear. If Owen could help this one, if he proved himself here, something would change. This was a test. Owen grabbed his medical kit and approached slowly. "Let me take a look." The elder draconid held perfectly still as Owen examined the shoulder. The injury was old, probably decades old based on how the tissue had adapted around it. Something metal was embedded deep in the muscle, and the scar tissue had formed in layers around the foreign object. This wasn't something Owen could treat in one session. This would require actual surgery, tools he didn't have, preparation time he needed. He looked up at the elder and shook his head. I can help you, but not today. I need to get ready first. Better equipment. Come back tomorrow. The elder Draconid watched him for a long moment. Then it nodded once, stood up, and walked away into the growing darkness. Owen stood outside his clinic, surrounded by watching Draconids, and wondered what he'd just gotten himself into. The line of patients waiting for tomorrow had just gotten a lot more serious. Owen spent half the night on his communicator, arguing with supply clerks at the nearest human colony. They didn't understand why he needed surgical equipment at a mining camp aid station. He couldn't exactly explain that he was about to operate on an alien creature that nobody was supposed to be making contact with. Finally, he just ordered what he needed using his emergency medical authorization. Someone would ask questions later, but he'd deal with that when it happened. The supply drone arrived at dawn, its engines whining as it settled near the clinic. Owen rushed out to grab the containers before the automated system could log too much data about the delivery location. Inside the crates, he found everything he'd requested: surgical tools, advanced anesthetics, monitoring equipment, and extra supplies that he set up a proper surgical area inside the clinic, sterilizing every surface twice. His hand shook slightly as he arranged the instruments. Owen had performed surgeries before during his training and early career, but never on a patient this important. Never with so many watching. The elder Draconid arrived exactly at midday, just as the sun reached its highest point. Dozens of other Draconids came with it, filling the canyon around Owen's clinic. They settled onto rocks and ledges, creating an audience that watched in complete silence. Owen wiped his palms on his pants and gestured toward the clinic. Come on in. Let's get this done. The elder had a duck to fit through the doorway. Once inside, it moved to the surgical area Owen had prepared and lay down without being asked. This creature understood what was about to happen. Owen pulled on surgical gloves and approached with a scanner. He needed to map out exactly where the metal fragment was lodged and how the tissue had grown around it. The scanner took several minutes to build a complete image. What Owen saw made his stomach tighten. The metal piece was embedded deep in the shoulder joint, wedged between two major muscle groups. The fragment was old human technology, probably from mining equipment. Somehow, years ago, this elder had been injured by Owen's own people. This is going to hurt, Owen said quietly, but I'll use anesthetic to make it better. Do you understand? The elder Draconid looked at him and made a low rumbling sound. Owen chose to interpret that as agreement, that he administered the anesthetic in stages, waiting between each injection to make sure the compounds worked properly on Draconid biology. The elder's breathing slowed as the medication took effect, but its eyes remained alert and focused on Owen. Owen picked up his scalpel and began. The first incision was the hardest. He'd studied Draconid anatomy as much as he could from observation, but actually cutting into living tissue was different. The muscle structure was similar to Earth reptiles, but denser, more efficient. Blood flow was strong but controlled. He worked carefully, separating layers of scar tissue that had built up over the years. The metal fragment became visible after 15 minutes of delicate cutting. It was a broken drill bit, snapped off and driven deep by some accident or confrontation. Owen used surgical pliers to grip the fragment. It didn't want to come out. The tissue had grown around it like tree roots around a stone. He had to cut away more scar tissue, working millimeter by millimeter. Sweat dripped down his face. The clinic felt too hot despite the environmental controls. Outside, the watching Draconids hadn't moved or made a sound. The pressure of their attention weighed on him like physical force. The fragment shifted slightly. Owen adjusted his grip and pulled with steady pressure. The metal piece slid free with a wet sound that made him wince. That he held up the drill bit so the elder could see it. Human technology. This is what's been causing you pain. The elder's eyes narrowed as it looked at the fragment. A low growl rumbled in its chest. Owen set the drill bit aside and focused on repairing the damage. He cleaned out all the remaining foreign material and old scar tissue. Then he began the careful work of reattaching muscle groups that had separated over time, bringing them back to their proper positions. The surgery took 3 hours total. By the end, Owen's back ached and his hands cramped from the precise movements. But the shoulder joint was clean, repaired, and properly aligned for the first time in decades. He stitched the incision closed with dissolving sutures designed for deep tissue. Then he applied a healing compound the draconids themselves had given him, a paste made from the plants they'd brought as gifts. Owen had tested it on himself and found it worked remarkably well. The final step was bandaging. Owen wrapped the shoulder carefully, creating support without restricting movement. "Done," he said, stepping back. "Try moving it slowly." The elder draconid stood up. The anesthetic was already wearing off thanks to its efficient metabolism. It rotated the shoulder experimentally, testing the range of motion. Owen watched nervously. If he'd made a mistake, if something wasn't right, this could go badly. The elder's shoulder moved smoothly through a full rotation. No grinding, no resistance, no pain visible in its expression. It extended the joint fully, then contracted it. The movement was fluid and natural. The elder looked at Owen with an expression he couldn't quite read. Then it lowered its massive head and touched its snout gently to Owen's forehead. The gesture lasted only a moment, but every draconid watching responded. A deep thrumming sound rose from dozens of throats at once, vibrating through the canyon walls and Owen's chest. It was beautiful and overwhelming and completely unlike anything he'd ever experienced. The elder draconid pulled back and reached up with one clawed hand. It plucked a single scale from its own chest, a piece as large as Owen's palm, and placed it in his hands. Owen held the scale carefully. It was warm and surprisingly light, with an iridescent sheen that caught the light. He understood this was significant, even if he didn't know exactly what it meant. The elder turned and walked out of the clinic, moving with a grace it probably hadn't possessed in years. The other draconids parted to let it through, then followed. Within minutes, the canyon was empty except for a few guards who remained on watch. Owen sat down heavily on his surgical stool. His hands were shaking again, but this time from relief and exhaustion. He looked at the scale the elder had given him, then at the bloody drill bit sitting in a surgical tray. His communicator buzzed. A message from the colonial administration appeared on the screen. They wanted to know why he'd ordered surgical equipment and where he was using it. Owen deleted the message without responding. He had more important things to worry about now. Through his window, he could see draconids still gathering in the distance. Word was spreading even further. More would come tomorrow seeking help. The line was growing. Owen cleaned his surgical tools and prepared for whatever came next. He'd crossed a line today, choosing his patience over protocol. There was no going back now. The scale rested on his desk, catching the fading sunlight. Whatever came next, he wouldn't face it alone. The transport vehicle arrived 3 days after Owen performed surgery on the elder. Administrator Wilson climbed out wearing a pressure suit despite the breathable atmosphere, followed by 2 security personnel and a woman in corporate clothing. Owen was treating a young draconid's infected claw when they walked up. He didn't stop working. "Dr. Hayes," Wilson said, his voice sharp. "We need to talk." "I'm with a patient," Owen replied, applying antibiotic gel to the infected area. "Wait inside." The young draconid chirped nervously at the newcomers. Owen spoke softly to calm it while he finished the treatment and applied a bandage. Only after the draconid had hopped away did Owen turn to face the officials. "What do you want?" Wilson gestured at the canyon around them, where several adult draconids watched from the rocks. "What do I want? I want to know why you've been making unauthorized contact with protected alien species. I want to know why you're operating an unlicensed xenobiological research facility. I want to know what the hell you think you're doing out here." "I'm providing medical care," Owen said. "That's my job." The corporate woman stepped forward. Her name tag read Director Reeves. "Dr. Hayes, we've been monitoring the satellite feeds. We know about your interactions with the native species. This is a serious breach of contact protocols." "There are no contact protocols," Owen shot back. "Nobody ever established any because you all pretended the draconids didn't exist. Makes it easier to expand mining operations if you ignore the intelligent species already living here." Wilson's face reddened. That's not your decision to make. You're here to serve human personnel, not to play xenobiologist with dangerous creatures. Dangerous? Owen laughed without humor. The only danger I've seen came from human equipment. That elder draconid I treated? It had a drill bit embedded in its shoulder for probably 20 years. Human technology. Our people did that. Reeves pulled out a tablet and tapped through several screens. Speaking of that elder, we're very interested in what you learned during the procedure. Draconid biology is largely unknown. Any data you gathered could be extremely valuable. Something cold settled in Owen's stomach. Valuable to who? To scientific understanding, Reeves said smoothly. And to the company. We're planning expansion into new territories. Understanding the native biology would help us minimize conflicts. You mean it would help you figure out how to push them off their land more efficiently? Wilson stepped closer, his voice dropping. Watch your tone, Doctor. We're offering you a chance to be part of something important. Your relationship with these creatures could be useful. If you cooperate with us, help facilitate negotiations, there could be significant benefits for your career. Owen looked at the security personnel, who stood with their hands near their weapons. He looked at Reeves, who watched him like a scientist studying a lab specimen. He looked at Wilson, who clearly saw the draconids as obstacles to profit. Get out of my clinic. Excuse me, Wilson said. You heard me. Get out. I'm not helping you exploit the draconids. I'm not providing data for your expansion plans. I'm not going to betray patients who trusted me. Wilson's expression hardened. You don't have a choice. I can revoke your medical authorization. I can have you removed from this planet. One word from me and your career is over. Then make the call, Owen said. But get off my property first. The argument was getting louder. Owen's voice rose as Wilson made threats. Neither of them noticed the draconids gathering on the canyon walls until there were dozens of them. The security personnel saw them first. One reached for his weapon. Don't, Owen said sharply. But the guard had already drawn his sidearm. The draconids on the walls tensed, their body language shifting to something aggressive. More appeared from the canyon depths, larger adults with battle scars and powerful builds. Put the weapon away, Owen said, keeping his voice calm despite his racing heart. Nobody needs to get hurt. They're surrounding us, the guard said, his gun shaking slightly. Owen stepped between the humans and the nearest draconids. He raised his hands, showing empty palms to both groups. His heart hammered against his ribs. Everyone stay calm, he said. The draconids are responding to the shouting and the weapon. They're protecting me because I've helped them. If you just lower the gun and back away slowly, everything will be fine. A massive shape landed heavily nearby. The elder draconid placed itself directly between Owen and the security guards. Its shoulder moved perfectly, fully healed. It made a low rumbling sound that echoed off the canyon walls. More draconids answered, creating a chorus of rumbling calls. It wasn't threatening exactly, but it was powerful. A reminder of who actually controlled this territory. Wilson went pale. Reeves took several steps backward. The security guards looked at each other, clearly realizing they were massively outmatched. Owen kept his hands raised and spoke to the elder. It's okay. They're leaving. Nobody's going to hurt anyone. The elder watched the humans with intelligent eyes. Waiting. Owen turned to Wilson. You need to go. Now. Walk back to your transport slowly. Don't make any sudden moves. Don't draw any weapons. Just leave. This isn't over, Wilson said, but his voice lacked conviction. Yes, it is, Owen replied. This clinic is neutral ground. I treat anyone who needs help, human or draconid. If you can't accept that, stay away. Wilson and his group backed toward their transport. The draconids watched but didn't advance. When the humans reached their vehicle, they climbed in quickly. The transport lifted off with a whine of engines and disappeared over the canyon rim. The gathered draconids began to disperse, returning to their positions or flying away. The elder remained, looking at Owen. Thank you, Owen said quietly, for not attacking them. That would have made everything worse. The elder made a softer sound, almost questioning. I don't know what happens now, Owen admitted. Wilson will report this. The company might try to shut me down, but I'm not leaving. I'm not abandoning my patients. The elder touched its snout to Owen's forehead again, the same gesture it had made after the surgery. Then it launched itself into the air with powerful wing strokes, the healed shoulder working perfectly. Owen went back into his clinic and sat down at his desk. His hands were shaking. He just defied colonial authority, threatened his career, and possibly started a conflict between humans and draconids. His communicator showed 17 new messages. He ignored them all that a small draconid appeared at the door, holding up an injured foot. Owen smiled tiredly and gestured it inside. "Come on in. Let me see what you've done to yourself." The work continued. Whatever consequences came from his choices, Owen would face them. But he wouldn't stop helping those who needed him. That was the promise he'd made when he became a doctor, and it didn't matter what species his patients were. Outside, the draconid guards took up their positions again. They'd increased their numbers. More protection for the human who'd chosen to stand with them. Owen treated the injured foot and prepared for the next patient. The line would keep growing, and he'd keep helping no matter what happened. The first sick draconid arrived on a morning that started like any other. Owen was restocking bandages when a juvenile stumbled through the door, breathing in harsh, ragged gasps. Fluid leaked from its nostrils, and its scales had lost their usual shine. This wasn't an injury. This was something worse. By evening, 3 more showed the same symptoms: fever, respiratory distress, weakness in the limbs. Owen ran every test his limited equipment allowed, trying to identify what he was dealing with. The scanner results made his blood run cold. Bacterial infection, aggressive and spreading fast. Similar to pneumonia, but adapted to draconid biology in ways that made it more dangerous. 2 days later, 20 draconids were sick. A week after that, the number had climbed to over 50. Young ones and old ones, strong and weak. The infection didn't discriminate. Owen worked without sleeping, treating patient after patient. Nothing he tried made a difference. The antibiotics designed for humans had no effect on this bacteria. Traditional draconid remedies helped with the symptoms, but couldn't cure the underlying infection. The first death happened on day 9. A hatchling that Owen had treated for burns weeks earlier. It stopped breathing while Owen tried to clear its airways. He'd held the small body and felt utterly helpless. More deaths followed. The elder came to the clinic, not for treatment, but to show Owen the extent of the crisis. It led him deep into draconid territory, to breeding grounds Owen had never seen before. Dozens of sick draconids lay in the caverns. The healthy ones tried to care for them, but they didn't know how. The elder looked at Owen with eyes that held both hope and grief. Owen traced the infection back to a contaminated water source. Recent mining expansion had caused runoff to pour into underground streams the draconids depended on. The bacteria had thrived in the polluted water and spread through the population. He tried to explain this to Wilson over the communicator. Tried to make the administrator understand that human activity had caused this epidemic. Wilson's response was cold. "We'll provide assistance if you agree to our terms. Help us establish mining rights in exchange for medical supplies." Owen ended the call without answering. He wouldn't trade draconid lives for corporate profit. Instead, he sent messages to every scientific network he could access. Independent researchers, xenobiologists, anyone who might help. Most ignored him. A few responded with skepticism. One message came back with actual interest. Dr. Rachel Ford arrived 4 days later on a private transport. She was a xenobiologist who'd been studying alien diseases for 15 years. Her funding had been cut recently because her research didn't generate profit, so she had time to spare. "Show me everything," she said, dropping her equipment in Owen's clinic. They worked together analyzing samples, testing compounds, trying to adapt human antibiotics for draconid biology. Rachel brought knowledge Owen lacked. He brought practical experience treating the patients. The draconids provided their own medical plants and minerals. Owen and Rachel studied each one, learning what the native remedies could do. Some had genuine antibacterial properties. Others supported immune function. What if we combine them? Rachel suggested on the 5th day. Human antibiotic base with draconid immune boosters. Create a hybrid treatment. They tested the combination on cell samples first, then on one very sick adult who volunteered despite the risks. Owen administered the treatment and waited point 6 hours later. The Draconid's fever broke. Its breathing eased. The infection markers in its blood began to drop. "It's working," Owen said, hardly believing it. They refined the formula and began treating more patients. Not all of them survived. The sickest ones, those who'd been fighting the infection for weeks, were too far gone. But the ones caught early enough responded well. The elder got sick on day 18. Owen found it outside the clinic one morning, struggling to breathe. The sight nearly broke him. This creature had become a friend, a bridge between their species. Losing it would mean losing so much more than one life. Rachel helped him carry the elder inside. They administered the strongest dose of the hybrid treatment they'd created. Then they waited. The elder fought the infection for 3 days. Its breathing grew shallow, then stopped entirely during the worst moments. Owen and Rachel took turns monitoring it, providing oxygen support, adjusting the medication, but on the morning of the 4th day, the elder opened its eyes and took a deep breath on its own. Owen sat down hard, relief making his legs weak. Rachel smiled for the first time since arriving. The turning point had come. With the treatment working, they could save most of the infected Draconids. Owen and Rachel trained healthy Draconids to help administer medication. The juveniles learned quickly, understanding dosages and timing better than Owen had expected. The epidemic began to recede. Recovery rates climbed. Deaths became rare instead of common. The breeding caverns that had been filled with sick and dying gradually returned to normal. Colonial authorities arrived to document the outbreak. They couldn't ignore a crisis this large, especially one caused by their own mining operations. Environmental scientists confirmed Owen's findings about the contaminated water. Wilson looked uncomfortable when he saw the evidence. "We'll implement new filtration protocols. Establish buffer zones around water sources." "You'll do more than that," Owen said. "You'll recognize Draconid territory officially. You'll establish environmental protections. And you'll provide funding for continued medical research." Wilson started to argue, but Rachel cut him off. "I'm publishing my findings regardless of what you decide. The scientific community will know that corporate negligence caused an epidemic that killed intelligent beings. How do you think that will look?" Wilson negotiated for 2 hours, but ultimately agreed to most of their demands. The alternative was worse publicity than the company could handle. After 3 months, the last patient recovered. Owen stood outside his clinic and watched healthy Draconids fly overhead. The canyon was alive with their calls again, no longer the sounds of grief but of celebration. Rachel decided to stay. "Someone needs to continue the research. Besides, I like it here." They began planning a proper medical facility, one designed to serve both species. The Draconids contributed knowledge and resources. The human colony provided equipment and supplies. Owen looked at the elder, fully recovered and stronger than before. The creature's eyes held something new. Not just gratitude or respect, but genuine partnership. "We did it," Owen said. "We actually did it." Rachel bumped his shoulder. "You did it. I just helped. You're the one who chose to care when nobody else would." The crisis had changed everything. What started with one injured hatchling had grown into something much larger. Trust built through shared struggle. Cooperation born from necessity. The line of patients still formed each day, but now it included humans seeking Draconid remedies and Draconids accepting human treatments. The barriers between species were breaking down. Owen had come to Eridos, 7 expecting to patch up minor injuries and count the days until his contract ended. Instead, he'd found his purpose. Not just as a doctor, but as a bridge between worlds. The work was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the epidemic ended. Owen stood in front of a building that hadn't existed when he first arrived on Eridos 7. The medical facility was half human design and half something else entirely, with rounded archways that accommodated Draconid wings and healing pools that used thermal vent water. Rachel worked inside, training a group of young Draconids in basic medical care. Through the window, Owen could see her demonstrating how to clean a wound while 3 juveniles watched closely. They were learning fast, already able to handle simple treatments on their own. The colonial government had officially recognized Draconid territory after the epidemic. Mining operations now had strict boundaries and environmental oversight. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than before. Owen's communicator buzzed with another message from Earth. News about his work had spread through scientific channels. Universities wanted him to lecture. Medical journals wanted papers. The story of the human doctor who'd bridged the gap between species had captured imaginations across human space. He ignored most of the requests. The work here mattered more than fame. The elder Draconid landed nearby, its movements smooth and powerful. The shoulder Owen had repaired worked perfectly now. The creature had gained weight since recovering from the epidemic, its scales bright and healthy. Going for a flight? Owen asked. The elder made an affirmative rumble and gestured toward the canyon with its head. An invitation. Owen had learned to read Draconid body language over the past months. He climbed onto the elder's back, gripping the ridges along its spine. The Draconid launched into the air with powerful wing strokes. Flying never got old. The wind rushed past as they rose above the canyon walls. Below, Owen could see both human and Draconid settlements, no longer separate but growing closer together. Children from the mining colony came to watch the Draconids fly. Draconid juveniles visited the human school to learn about technology. The elder carried Owen deep into territory few humans had ever seen. They landed in a vast cavern lit by bioluminescent fungi and thermal vents. Hundreds of Draconids gathered here, and at the center was what Owen had heard about but never seen. The hatchery. Eggs rested in carefully maintained nests, tended by adults who regulated temperature and humidity with practiced care. Newly hatched Draconids chirped and played under watchful eyes. This was the heart of their civilization, the future of their species. The elder had brought Owen here for a reason. It led him to a platform where other elders waited, the council that governed Draconid society. One gestured for Owen to approach. Through a combination of gestures, drawings in the sand, and simple words the Draconids had learned, they made their proposal clear. They wanted Owen to establish a permanent presence. Not just a doctor, but a liaison between their peoples. Someone who understood both sides and could help them navigate this new relationship. "You want me to stay?" Owen asked. The elders confirmed with rumbling sounds. "I need help. More doctors, more researchers. We need to train people from both species." The elders agreed. They were willing to share their knowledge, their resources, their world. In exchange, they wanted the same from humanity. Real partnership, not exploitation. Owen thought about his old life. The failed relationships, the boring assignments, the feeling that nothing he did really mattered. Then he thought about the first injured hatchling, the line of patients that had formed, the lives saved during the epidemic. "Yes," he said, "I'll stay." The thrumming sound that rose from the gathered Draconids shook the cavern walls. Acceptance, celebration, welcome. Owen was no longer an outsider. He was part of their community now. Over the following weeks, volunteers arrived from Earth. Doctors who wanted to learn xenobiology. Researchers interested in cross-species cooperation. Teachers willing to work with Draconid young. Not all of them lasted. Some couldn't handle the challenges or the isolation. But enough stayed to make a difference. The joint facility expanded. Human children and Draconid hatchlings learned together. Medical students from both species shared techniques and knowledge. What had started as one small clinic became something much larger. Owen trained the new arrivals personally. He taught them what he'd learned about treating Draconid patients, about reading their body language, about earning their trust. Most importantly, he taught them to listen and respect. One afternoon, a ship landed at the facility carrying an unexpected passenger. A kelth, one of the insectoid species from the outer colonies. It limped down the ramp with an injured leg. "I heard there was a human doctor here who helps anyone," the kelth said through its translator. "Is that true?" Owen smiled and gestured toward the clinic. "Come on in. Let's take a look at that leg." Word was spreading beyond Eridos 7. Other species had heard about the human who crossed boundaries to provide care. They came seeking treatment, but also seeking proof that cooperation between different peoples was possible. Rachel came out of the training wing and stood next to Owen as he treated the Kelth's fractured leg. You know this is bigger than just medicine now, right? We're building something that could change how species interact across the galaxy. Maybe, Owen said, applying a splint. Or maybe we're just helping people who need it. Sometimes that's enough. The kelp tested its leg and made a grateful clicking sound. Thank you, Doctor. I will tell others about this place. After the kelp left, Owen went outside and looked at the canyon. The elder Draconid sat on a nearby cliff, watching the sunset. Draconid juveniles flew overhead, practicing aerial maneuvers. Human children played near the facility entrance while their parents worked inside. That IT had all started with one small act. One injured hatchling and a choice to help despite the risks. Owen couldn't have predicted where that choice would lead. The bridges built, the lives saved, the understanding created. A young Draconid hopped up to him, holding an injured wing. Owen recognized it as the grandchild of the first patient he'd ever treated. The cycle continued, generation after generation, learning that help could come from unexpected sources. Let me see, Owen said gently, examining the wing. The work never ended. There would always be someone who needed care, someone seeking understanding, someone willing to cross the barriers that separated peoples. Owen had found his purpose in being that bridge. The lines still formed each day. Humans, Draconids, and now other species too, all coming to a place where differences didn't matter, where need was met with compassion, where one person's choice to care had rippled outward to touch countless lives. Owen finished treating the young Draconid's wing and watched it hop away. The elder called from its perch, a sound of contentment and peace. The sun set over Eridos 7, painting the canyon walls in shades of copper and gold. Tomorrow would bring new patience, new challenges, new opportunities to build understanding. Owen wouldn't have it any other way. He'd wrapped a bandage on a dragon baby's wing, and dozens more had lined up for his help. Now that line stretched across species and worlds, all because he'd chosen to care when it mattered most.